more NancyTedeschi from snapitscrew.com. She's in my studio today, and she's having to hear all the ideas I've ever had during the commercial breaks because she's got me so fired up. Anyway, we're talking, as I said, with NancyTedeschi. You can learn more about her product at snapitscrew.com. She is the winner of the Walmart Get on the Shelf Award, and she's here to tell us how she did it step by step, because I know there are people listening who've had ideas that were not brought to fruition for whatever reason. And right now, as she's told us, she has, in her story, a provisional patent. Up to this point in the interview, a provisional patent. She has a mechanical engineer. She's paying $500 to do the drawings, and she is now going through a patent agent. So at this point, she's spent $620. So pick it up from where we left off, Nancy. All of those things have happened, and now you're getting ready for the prototype. So that's kind of where the real money may come in. But what's the next step for that?
Well, one of the things...
And how do you find someone who can make a prototype?
Okay, one of the things I will say that by filing a provisional patent and having that year before you have to file your regular patent application, it actually gives you the ability to show your product to people to see what kind of interest is out there, because, you know, everybody thinks they have the best ideas ever, and you know, I've seen some really good ones and I've seen some really poor ones, and the last thing I want people to do is go out and file their regular patent application before they do some homework. I mean, if you invent a car seat, then you want to take it to somebody who's an expert in car seats and show it and get feedback from these people, because you want to know that you're actually putting good money towards good money and not investing in something that isn't going to go anywhere. That's the last thing that we want you to do. So what I did was I actually I found a small screw manufacturer out of Rochester, New York, and at the time I was living in upstate New York, and I called him up, and he actually was an optical screw maker, and that was the first actually application that I've used for my screws in the eyeglass industry. So I actually made an appointment, and I drove up there, and we sat down and met. And his uncle actually started this company in 75 years ago, and they supplied a lot of the optical screws to Bosch and Lomb. And this man had been working in the industry for about 35 years, and when I showed him my screw, he was like, "Oh my God!" He was just like so blown away, because
isn't that great? Yeah. So that's kind of the confirmation you're looking for, that this idea could go.
Exactly. When you want to find somebody that's in that industry, that's an expert, and you want to get confirmation that it's something that they think you should take to the next step, and not just one person. I would say that because a lot of people won't have your, you know, what your vision is, and even the one person that you take it to might not have your vision. So I would suggest taking to it at like a handful of people, just to get the feedback, and then you know, nobody can take your dream away from you, but you have to be educated enough to accept criticism and accept, you know, maybe there are some negatives to what you have invented.
Or just some modifications. So if you're dealing with the baby industry, talk to moms. If you're dealing with the eyeglass industry, talk to people in the eye industry, that sort of things. It doesn't have to be a real organized, you know, where you've polled, you know, 1,000 people. Exactly. You're saying just ask some simple questions of some people who understand what you're talking about.
And make sure they're not all your friends.
Exactly, because they just tell you what you want to hear sometimes.
Exactly.
Sometimes. Okay, so go ahead, Ben. You're ready. The ophthalmologist says you're onto something.
Well, yeah, the guy who did my prototype said I was onto something, and I actually ordered some prototypes. He had made me some prototypes, and now I was able to show it. I had them, and I was able to show it. But then you go, okay, show it to who?
Yeah.
What do you do? Oh my God, you know. So now I have these screws. I have no idea what to do with it. A lot of my progress was through Google. I mean, I was lucky that the internet is here, because Google, you can Google anything and figure out a way to do something. But what I ended up doing was I made a lot of mistakes along the way, and I think it's important that I talk about my mistakes as well, because, you know, now I think, oh my God, I got this product, what am I going to do with it? Well, my first thing that I tried to do with it was take it to the consumer market, because I knew how difficult it was for people to fix their glasses. And so I had a package, and I didn't know how to package, I didn't know how to do any of that. So I had a pretty ugly package, as a matter of fact. My first package was not so good. And I actually was able to, I picked up the phone, and I went into like a Walgreens or a CVS, and I started looking at other eyeglass repair kits, and I tried to figure out who distributed them. So I was like, okay, well, if I go in there and I look and say, okay, well, the one that I looked at was distributed by FGX International. And so I went to, I went online to Google, and I Googled FGX International because they seem to have all the eyeglass repair kits out there. So I picked up the phone and I called FGX International and I said, can I talk to somebody in your innovation department who would be in charge of bringing in new products? And luckily for this particular one, I was able to get through, but most of the time you can't get through because it's like ridiculous how you have to like know somebody that knows somebody to get into these companies. But I actually got into to this company, and if, for those of you who don't know, FGX International is Foster Grant and Magnavision. And I actually negotiated a licensing agreement with them, and they were going to pay me a certain amount of money, and I signed the deal with them. And 9 months later, they hadn't done anything with my product. So that's a lesson that I like people to know, because when I negotiated the licensing agreement, although it had a reasonable clause in it that they had to do commercial efforts to get it on the shelf, they didn't do anything with it. So my product sat for 9 months and not one bit of advancement came back.
How long did you give them? I mean, was there a clause, obviously, in the contract, how long they had to do it before you could get it back? And how long was that?
And it was 9 months.
Okay, so at the end of the 9 months, you were over it.
I was way over it and way disappointed. And that's another thing as an inventor. Being an inventor is a very depressing thing, because not only do you not know what to do, you don't, every path that you cross, something goes wrong, and when it goes wrong, you get such downs and highs and lows, and it's just like the patience and perseverance that you need to actually go to the next step musters all your energy, and I felt like I was depressed for 3.5 years doing this project. But in retrospect, I think that the best thing that ever happened to me was losing the deal with Foster Grant, because that's when I took it under my own wing and said, you know what, nobody's going to do this better than me, because it's my product, I have a belief in it. So that's when I really took it into myself and said, okay, no more giving it to anybody else. What am I going to do now? And I chose a different direction. Instead of the consumer market, I chose the optical market.
Okay, let's take a quick break. We're going to get more of the details from Nancy Tedeschi. If you want more information about her product, snapitscrew.com. Visit her website. She's also going to give you her email address at the end of the show for anyone who has specific questions to ask her about their product ideas or the processes she's been through. She's very willing to give help, and give help at no cost. And that was one of the things that she and I were talking about. I had an idea for a product a couple years back, about 6 years back, and even for as smart as I am, as smart as I like to think I am sometimes, I make my mistakes as well, just as Nancy was saying. And I got investors, and we had $52,000 to bring an idea I had from concept to creation, and absolutely nothing happened with it. So she and I talked about that before the show, and she says she hears so many stories like it every single day. So we know there are people out there listening who've been through the same thing or want to avoid going through that. So we're going to give you more information when we come back in just a moment. Nancy Tedeschi, snapitscrew.com. When we come back in just a moment on the Life with Lisa show, 560 KPQ.